I'm happy to talk to veteran dealer, artist, writer, collector, curator, lecturer, and art world provocateur Kenny Schachter. Kenny is one of the most active people in the art world. He curates shows in galleries and museums around the world, sells art, his own art, creates art, deals with art of others, writes articles. Probably his most known article or column is on Artnet. He knows everyone and everyone has an opinion about him. We first met many years ago when he wrote a review of my book, Management of Art Galleries. Kenny, I'm very happy to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time. You wear so many different hats. What's your favorite role?
I love teaching. I'm now teaching a fine art studio class at School of Visual Arts, which is a nice change because I haven't really taught a fine art class since 1992. Since then, I've been teaching nonstop, but it's mostly seminars, most recently 8 years at the University of Zurich in graduate seminar on art and economics. So I think it's kind of a perfect time, historically and otherwise, to be teaching art making and art itself due to the present situation that we're going through right now.
So less focus on money, more focus on creating art.
Yeah, I think that, I'm not one of these people. I embrace all facets of the art world, and hence I wear so many hats. But for me, there's really a continuous thread that runs throughout everything that I do. And mainly it's that I studied philosophy and then went into 5 different careers before I landed in art. And I went to law school, I worked in the fashion business, I was writing for a law firm and doing various things. And so I think that having come from outside the system, I was never entrenched in the kind of systematic institutional way of thinking that pervades the art world, this kind of mass conservatism, which is really the opposite of what most people would think in relationship to the art world. So really my entire practice is sort of dissecting and analyzing and critiquing art once it enters once it commercially disseminated into the stream of commerce. And I didn't enter a gallery till I was 27 years old. And in fact, I didn't even know galleries existed. And I believe that that informs everything I do, from the art I make, the teaching I do, and the writing I do, because I didn't come from within the gallery world and make my way up. And as a result, I have a very fresh and I'll always be an outsider, even though I obviously have a foot and a half on the inside. So I love writing, I love teaching and conveying and sharing all of the information that I've gathered over the course of the decades of my career in the art world. And I love making art, writing about art and teaching it, but not really the commercial side, funny enough, even though that's where I often find myself.
You're coming from the outside, but you know the inside very well. What do you think about those roles that exist? There are galleries, then the primary market, then secondary market, auction houses. They interact, buyers and artists interact through these two intermediaries. Museums and writers are intermediaries too. Is that still how the art world works, or are all the roles interconnected and there are no clear roles anymore?
Well, that's a really great question for where we are right now, because first of all, I've always been a blurrer. I've always loved to blur the distinct. Obviously, my whole career is a giant mishmash of blurring the traditional roles that people normally assume in the art world. And a dilettante historically was something good, whereas people that love to pursue different realms that was something to be applauded. And the art world, is the opposite of what a typical romantic notion is, that everyone goes around getting wasted, drinking absinthe and cutting their ears off. But in fact, the art world is, I've been in the law, I passed my bar, I practiced law, I was looking to be a fashion designer because I wanted to do something creative and entrepreneurial before I knew even the art world existed, other than going to museums and university. But the thing is that the art world has always been terrible and notorious for trying to pigeonhole people into doing only very sort of tight things like wearing blinders. So I remember my wife was once sitting next to Matthias Rastoffer, who previously was on the selection committee at Basel, and he would actually make a statement like, who does Kenny Schachter think he is that he could one day be a curator, one day be an artist, and one day be a writer or dealer or something. And really, like, people talk of conflicts of interest and various things. There's no such thing as a conflict of interest. There's no such thing. Integrity, if you breach morals and ethics in any pursuit, then you have a conflict of interest. You could do 157 things, and if you do them respectfully, legally, and with an eye towards just basic human integrity, you cannot have a conflict. And again, as long as I celebrate transparency and honesty in all of my writing. That's why I have an audience that I've grown to the extent I have, because the art world embraces lies. I've never seen a field where, like, all you hear about in the news is fake news every day living in America. But the fact is, the art world is the only place where they actually celebrate lies and fake news. And there's not one art dealer or one person practicing professionally in the art world that doesn't lie. Like, if you rock up to the Basel Art Fair and interview the biggest galleries in the fair about how they've done, you'll experience a rate of around 99.4% untruths. So I think that now Sotheby's just announced a mere 2 days ago that they'll now be representing galleries on their website selling primary art from the likes of Gavin Brown and various other top flight dealers. And that really is, like, by far the most egregious blurring that's ever happened in the art world to date. The fact that auction houses, Sotheby's in particular, has now literally barged right into the door of the primary gallery world. But again, like everyone in this day, we've now experienced like the biggest disruption in the history since galleries came into existence, being the COVID crisis. And of course, first and foremost, it's a life or death health crisis. But second of all, fully 30% of the art galleries in the world are about to go out of business within the next year. And this is a kind of a downturn and a constriction in the economic ecosystem of the art world, the likes of which history has never seen before since the first gallery opened. So I think the fact that Sotheby's does this and has such high-level participation by galleries of a super high caliber shows you just how serious a state the art world is in, and just how they're really, like you said, like there are no more, a categorization does nobody any good by saying an auction house can't sell art private treaty, or a gallery can't do this, or a dealer can't make art, or a writer can't sell art. You know, you can do anything you want. And art, the most beautiful thing about being an artist, and like, you know, with all due respect to you and like Jerry Saltz just wrote a book on how to be an artist, and he's not an artist. He's one of the foremost widely read art critics in the history of art criticism, and yet he felt compelled to write a book about making art. And you're a great writer and professor, and you wrote a book about having galleries, which again, I think is great because people really should do whatever they want.
You love my book, right?
Oh, of course, you're a great person. I'm not going to get critical here and now, but I'm very critical about myself as well. And I'm not a mean person, and I come to art with one thing, which is probably, if I can impart any information to anyone who wants to be involved in the arts, there's one word that really is the one necessitating factor to excel in any facet in the business of art, making art. It's passion and love. As corny as it sounds. I'm a self-taught person, and I've written for MIT, Springer Verlag. I teach an art studio practice class. I've never taken an art class in my entire life, other than the classes I've taught. I mean, I've taught at the highest rung. I'm having a show of my own art at Plum & Pro in Tokyo, and I never took an art class. I took one sculpture class in law school, one drawing class, and the rest I started teaching in '92 at the New School for Social Research. So I think that if you're determined and disciplined, and if you have the wherewithal to apply yourself and read and study, like the one rule that, back to Jerry's book, and I love Jerry Saltz so much, and even more so his wife, who's an utter genius, the New York Times critic, Roberta Smith, who used to work for Donald Judd. But the only thing that I would differ in relationship to the whole premise of his book is there are no rules. That's why we get involved in art, or that's why I did. I saw Vito Acconci masturbating under the floor of Sonnabend Gallery in 1972. I didn't see it, I was a kid. But when I read about it, when I came of age, I thought if you could masturbate and make a career out of it, that could potentially be something I would like to pursue for the rest of my life.
So in your opinion, you were talking about the roles are not There are no clear roles anymore.
No.
What it requires in order to be successful is passion and love. Is that it? Is that everything that it takes in order?
No. People, dedication, perseverance, tenacity. I studied writing when I was in university, and my writing teacher told me that I should stop writing, that I wasn't cut out for a writer. I won like Art Writer of the Year for 3 years. I mean, big wow. But the fact is, like, I was in tears when she said that to me. Literally, I was crying, and I ripped up my paper before the advent of like computers to date myself. And then I went to the head of the department. He wanted to see the paper by which I was partially judged, and the paper didn't exist anymore because I threw it away. But the fact is, like, if anything, I'm grateful for having a difficult childhood. My mother passed away when I was very young. My father tried to get me to quit art altogether as a parent, seeing someone like go into this field, which is filled with uncertainty. And I just think, like, again, like, it's not that you need an adversarial or a bad experience in life to excel in the art world, which is another kind of romantic cliche. But being in a position where the art world is a place where, despite there are no rules, anything goes. But like everything, hard work is much better than being a erudite genius. The most important thing to do anything is to study, to read, to see as much art as possible. I mean, they say you have to have a good eye for art, but I always say you need 2 good eyes. Or like even like Johann Koenig, his passion even exceeded his sight because he could barely see. But he wanted it so badly in relationship to his family and their position in the arts that he did it despite impaired sight. And that's a beautiful, most extraordinary story. And that really is a kind of, in a nutshell, indicative of what it takes to do anything great in life. Just do it. But it takes reading, studying, and the constant 24 hours a day, 7 days a week application of looking and reading.
How do you do it? I mean, you are an artist, you create artworks that are sold, but you also have a gallery, then you create another gallery.
No, gallery. No, I love gallerists. And when I deal, I'm a dealer to dealer. I hate art collectors because I don't think art collectors exist. If you find an art collector who is nurturing the careers of artists, who's never sold a piece of work, and they belong in a vitrine in the Museum of Natural History. I love everyone who supports art because it trickles down. But I like art dealers because art dealing is a hapless job, as you know yourself, having once had a gallery. And the fact is that, like, I only deal to other dealers because I can't sell crack to a crackhead, and I don't want to. I'm not a salesman. I like to sit and think and read and study. And what I love about art, I teach so I can continue to learn. Part of it is selfish, even though I love to teach information to students. But yeah, if that answers your question, whatever it was.
Well, how did you get into the art market? Because you said you're an outsider. What did come first, the collecting part or the art, the creative part? Or
like, I'm unusual in terms of collecting because, like I always say, I'm an idiot savant because I'm kind of an idiot. And I started because I knew I wanted to do something creative and entrepreneurial. But like I said, my family had no exposure to art. I didn't even know, like I said, I didn't even know art was bought and sold. I naively thought that when an artist made art, it ended up in the Smithsonian Museum, where I experienced it when I was in college. So I did. And then, like, after I went into the fashion business and I was like Willy Loman carrying around suitcases selling fashion, and it was such an existential dilemma and such a harrowing experience. Then I was procrastinating between looking for jobs, and a friend dragged me to Andy Warhol's estate sale at Sotheby's. And back then I was no great fan of Warhol's art, which I'd grown, of course, to understand more, and his impact in the world of ideas. And in any event, when I saw that they were gearing up for a spring auction, I literally had an epiphany. Saw an ad in the New York Times for a Cy Twombly paper show. I went to the gallery and I was so taken aback that this stuff could be bought and sold that I went to Chase Manhattan Bank. I had passed the bar, shockingly, took a part-time job in a law firm. I applied for a loan to buy art. The banker looked at me like I was like a lunatic. I had the owner of the law firm call up the bank and vouch for my job. And then I bought the art, and then I was immediately like selling to people like Andrea Rosen and to Pace Gallery and at auctions. So I was like this kind of, I mean, I wanted it so badly, and I had the discipline like military school of studying for the bar exam. So I started traveling to Europe and buying art and selling it back into the States. Like, but the thing is, like, when I deal, which I hate to call myself, I once made an art piece where I wrote the word dealer on my face, like Prince did when he wrote the word slave on his face because he wanted to get out of his record contract. And I hated the way like people look askance at me because I sold art to make a living and made it because I had to and because I wanted to. But no one would take me seriously until the last few years. But what I'm saying is, like, I would buy, or I collect art. It's part of my life. If you see, like, I'm in my office right now, and I'm one of the few people, like, I've been on a plane like every 3 weeks for the last 10 years, and sitting with my art in my office where I think and work and write, it's been a gift. I mean, every day I rub my nose up against a painting or a drawing, and to be surrounded by these things. So when I'm only dealing from 99% from things that I've collected over the course of 30 years. So I had a one owner online only sale called The Hoarder, because I often think I'll die when all my stuff falls on my, right. So I did that at Sotheby's, and I'm going to do it again. It was slated for July, but it's going to be postponed a little bit. But that was only like 10, that was like 5% of my collection. Oh, wow. So I've amassed a great deal of work, close to 1,000 pieces, and they're not valuable mostly, but I live off of selling them piecemeal to support my teaching and my writing.
Can you give me 3 advice that you like to share with artists so they can become successful?
Well, I mean, I have to say, like, in the 30 years of my career, and I'm always looking at, I hate the word disruptive. It's such a cliche right now. But the fact is, like, there's not one, I write for Artnet, there's Artnet, Art News, Artsy Fartsy, blah, blah. They all suck, really, more or less, if you ask me, all of them. Not one platform existing today that has the premise of being an art platform. I'm not even sure that any of them will even be in existence, solvent, in the next 3 to 5 years. I don't think Artsy, they've raised between $1 and $200 million. I bet you they've never made a single profit throughout the entire duration and existence of that company. So Instagram, for me, has been a hierarchical wrecking ball in the history of art and the dissemination. And when I started, you used to have to send a sheet of 20 little slides that were like 1 inch by 1 inch, and you would send them to galleries by snail mail. And that was literally the only way to convey imagery from one person to the other, was by photographic slide or transparency if you had more money. So Instagram, I mean, my family mocks me because I spend so much time on it, but it has literally impacted my life in so many profound ways. It helped me to sell my own art. I just sold a piece this morning of my own art that I first showcased on, it was relating to an article I wrote, but it was on Instagram. So Instagram really is this like paradigm shifting wrecking ball and breaking down the traditional hierarchies. This is a great way to get around the galleries that are very exclusionary, and now they're in a tremendous financial crunch. So exposing your art on Instagram is not a joke, and it's not a vanity thing, and it's the most serious. I mean, I've gotten in touch with some of the most beautiful people, from kids that I mentor people and I thesis advise students from all over the world. I will answer every single DM that comes my way. I've had meetings with 17-year-olds and kids and everyone, and try to help and share the information I've gathered over the years to anyone who's interested in doing it. And I've met Richard Prince and went to his studio in upstate New York together with him and forged a relationship with him. But it's just like, this never existed throughout my life. This kind of accessibility is so anyway, Instagram would be number 1. Number 2 is reading as much as possible. I mean, there's always like 5 websites I go to first thing in the morning every day. Like, there's one that very few people know about called artsjournal.com. And it's probably the most incredible website that nobody has ever heard of, because it culls articles from all over the world about art. There's all different divisions like theater, film, philosophy, and there's one for visual arts. And every single day I pop open that site along with Art News, Artnet, the art newspaper, Vulture from New York Magazine, where I recently wrote a feature for. So you have to read 7 days a week because art is like law and like medicine. And it's changed from the start of our conversation to the end. It's already changed about 74 million times in terms of the contributions of artists from all over the world. So you have to read those websites and read books every single day, and then looking. Christopher Wool made a painting, the harder you look, and you could look at every digital viewing room in the world and it'll enhance your intelligence art-wise and it'll help you, but nothing will substitute for standing in front of a drawing. I love works on paper. They're so accessible. Prints. I collect in the way that I think, non-hierarchically and democratically. And I'm sitting in front of a Christopher Wool poster from 1989, Rachel Harrison sculptures, limited edition prints. Anything great is great. And I don't believe in this kind of money. People say art is too expensive. It's not expensive. You could go to a school when schools reopen outside of Zoom. You could buy art for $100 or $200 on Instagram. That's profound and meaningful. So it's really just looking, reading, and then like trying to use tools such as Instagram to art is a tool of communication, and art is a way to like connect philosophical thoughts to images and connecting people. So Instagram is a great way to communicate visually. And beyond that, I've had like literally hundreds of real life meetings that have emanated from first exposures on Instagram.
Kenny, thank you very much.
One run-on sentence. I give it to you. You don't even have to ask a question. Just wind me up and let it go. Let it rip. It's all true what I say, and it's all heartfelt, and it's my life. And I only ever preach about things that I do myself and I care about. So